So, then let's produce a podcast. Let's see a couple of detailed information about capturing the audio and editing the audio. First, about the capturing the audio. There's an image of us doing the Puhujan Kulma podcast. That was, I believe, the 200th episode, maybe, recorded. Most of the times we are not at the same place. We are a couple of panelists, but we are not in the same place. But then we were, and actually you can see the Edirol machine in the centerpiece that we were recording the audio then. But when you're recording, of course, select a quiet location. If not, or if you're doing a podcast that is or should be like a feel that you are in a cafeteria, then you should have some kind of background sound that sounds like you are in a cafeteria. So then it's not necessary to have a quiet location. But then again, they have to hear your voice. So some background noises could be there, but the noise or the voice, not noise, voice of yourself should be very present. Do a test recording in that location where you're actually going to do those podcasts. That way it's easier to actually hear what the sound is going to be when you are doing that recording. And do a couple of different kind of recording while you are actually monitoring your recording. Of course, monitor your recording when you're doing the actual podcast, but you can, of course, use the monitoring system to monitor your test podcast also. Do two kind of testing. One, just don't speak. Like I'm now doing. Just listen to this. And when you're recording that, you can actually hear what is the silent sound on that room. So you can pick up some unwanted voices on that room. I believe when I didn't speak, you didn't hear anything. But that's another thing. We are coming back to that later. But the other thing is then speak something and record that. Why to do these two things is to try to prevent the echo if you can. And the echo comes when you are speaking. The room could be very echoey. I don't know if that's a word, but when you talking, there's some kind of echo coming back to the microphone. And when you're not speaking, you can hear if there are air conditioning or some other voices that are coming through. If you are on the office building, you can hear if you can actually hear people outside that room while they are talking. Try to do the testing at the time you are trying to make that podcast. So if you know that there is going to be a lot of people maybe behind that door, try to do a test when there is a lot of people next to that your location where you're actually recording. And then when we have already recorded the audio, everything went fine. You had some kind of plan and maybe a script and there was panelists and you recorded the audio. It's recorded maybe directly to the computer using external microphone, or you used some kind of external recorder and you exported that file to your computer. Then we open up some kind of sound editor and edit something basic stuff on the audio. Here's a screenshot of Audacity software, and that is a free, it's open source, and you can use it on a Windows or a Mac or even a Linux. Runs well, and you can do these things very good on that software. So you can do very awesome things about the audio if you know something. So I just go the basic, simple stuff. Let's trim the audio. That's the basic thing to do. Just remove from the start some unwanted audio so the podcast or the speaking starts directly when you want it to do. So if I'm just like rambling around, maybe checking that the audio levels are good, and then I'm saying, hello and welcome to this test podcast. Then I want to remove the early part and just start the podcast from where I say, hello, welcome to the test podcast. And of course, we go to the end. When we end the show, we say something bye-bye and see you on the next episode, or leave your comments to this and this email address. And then we don't end the recording, of course, right at the time. So we want to cut the audio at the end of the line also, so the audio podcast stops where we want it to. We could do basic normalization, or just like an amplify if we need it, because when you are recording, you want to record that audio at the highest level you can, but don't peak. I think that should be somewhere on these slides, how to prevent that, but it's not. So I'm saying here, when you're doing the recording, just to keep sure that you are not peaking. That means that the audio level on that microphone went so high, it was too high. I cannot demonstrate it because I have hardware between that prevents that. But because that is something you cannot fix. If the sound is a little bit too quiet, we can amplify it. Of course, if it's really very, 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 very low volume, then that could bring some background audio that we don't want there. But basically, you can always fix that. But if you are peaking, the audio is too loud. There's nothing to do. It's even though you're turning the volume down in the editing software, you still hear the sound breaking up. So to be in the safe side, just try to capture the audio the highest level you can, but prevent from peaking. To make sure, make a couple of steps down while you are recording, so you can be sure that you are not peaking the audio. You can test that. Everybody is talking with a normal language. Everybody is talking at the same time. Of course, somebody can cough or do something like that was speaking, and that's not a very bad thing. You can edit that out if you want, and that's a short term. But if somebody is shouting something, they are very enthusiastic of something, and that all that they are saying is scrambled because it's going too high. That's not fun to listen. So, from that said, then we need to amplify the sound, and I put here like the minus 3 decibels. That's roughly a good point to have the highest peak on your audio. So if you had some kind of intro or outro music, this is the place to put it in. When we are doing the Puhujain Kulma podcast, I'm actually recording it live. So we have the intro and outro music coming when we are actually recording. But I think the easiest way, I don't know easiest way, but the basic way to do is record the actual podcast and then add the intro and outro music while you're editing the audio. And that's not necessary to do, by the way, but if you want to do. And if you do intro or outro music, make it a short one. And easy to talk like over the music. Of course, you can do some fading at the start or at the end of the, if you're using intro, it fades a little bit and then you're talking over that. And if you are doing outro, then the other way around, you speaking over that, saying bye bye bye, and the sound is actually, or the music is actually playing behind, and when I stop speaking, the volume of this outro music is coming up. Then you need to save that file into, and like I said, I prefer the MP3 format. You save it to the MP3 format. You use the 64 or 128 bit rate. That's very typical for the if you have podcast when you're only speaking. Of course, you can go higher. If you're using music, you should have higher. A higher bitrate means that the sound quality is better. But then again, the file size of the MP3 file is getting larger and larger. So if you're doing like an 10 minutes or half an hour podcast, 20 minutes, something like that, then you can go pretty much higher or choose the 128 bitrate. And the sound is good. When we are doing the Puhujan Kulma podcast, that can actually last from 1 hour to maybe over 3 hours. Yeah. Just talking. And so we use 64 just to be sure that the file sizes are optimal and still the audio quality is good when we are just speaking. And then when you're saving that as an MP3 format, you can add these ID3 tags inside that file. And some of them are very good to actually have there because those information are displayed when you are actually listening to the podcast on a phone, a smartphone, or some kind of MP3 player, or some kind of application on your computer. It always shows this information inside the ID tags. And so there are a couple of things that you should put there, like the artist on that should be maybe the producer of that podcast. If that's a company, then the company name. Well, we are doing it, I'm calling it Pod Studio. This is my small studio in my home that I'm recording it, so I'm acting as a producer of the show, so then the Pod Studio is the producer. Then you have the album, and the album should be the name of that podcast. So like we have Puhujan Kulma. So that would be the name of the podcast. And then track title would be, of course, the name of that one episode. And you can put the number at the start of that episode. It could be like episode 1 or episode 2, or it could have some kind of name. So the topic of that podcast episode that you just made. Then you put the genre, and to there you just put the word podcast, because you are making podcast. So this MP3 is not music, it's podcast. And then there's the copyright information. If you want to use some kind of copyright, if you want to copyright that piece of audio that you made, the podcast, to the company, then put that in. Or, like I said, if wanted, that is the place to put it.